scale runs in this, and I'll ask you to run us up and down. The scale is actually the normal scale, but we use 4 shapes to designate scale. Fa, sol, la, fa, sol, la, mi, fa. And because of the way this is done, basically you're always singing in C, because you can move this thing around wherever you want. You'll notice that we've shifted several times to go up or go down. So a fa is the same distance from the fa, no matter what two have to be singing or whatever, which does make it a little easier to adjust for a group, and that is tradition. If you've got a lot of high treble, you may wind up singing things higher than you would. If you've got the really strong basses, you'll probably drop it down just a bit.
One of our founders actually had perfect pitch, and as she went to third, I have to tough it out when I go to the sixth because what she saw on the paper was not what we were singing. Okay, so it was really hard for her sometimes. But ultimately, the really great thing about that is that you can take what you're singing and mix it to your group. And so the best example I can give you is early in the morning when I was saying everything tends to be pitched relatively low. But after supper on the grounds and everybody's eaten all the desserts and their carbohydrate and sugar levels are through the roof, everything's pitched about a third higher. Okay? So you kind of respond to the dynamics of your group as well, which is kind of a fun thing about it.
Somebody said, what do you mean it's always better after lunch? And I said, it's always better after lunch.
Because, one too many helpings of cream cake and things get very different.
And water is very good.
Could you explain the significance of the do-re-mi?
Do-re-mi is the 7-shape note, and it is still used by the Mennonites. There are still books published in the 7 shapes. And actually, there are several different versions of it in terms of actually how the notes look in the 7 shapes. Different books will actually have a different shape. I'm trying to think. Christian Harmony is still in 7.
And Julie Andrews is still in 7 shapes. When Julie starts singing Do-a-deer, a female deer, she's actually quoting the scale as designed by Guido Lorenzo. And that in itself, do-re-mi, each syllable actually is the start of a line of a prayer. Dominus is what do actually is in the full extension of it. And so what we're doing is we're taking syllables, but we're applying them more to the interval they apply to rather than necessarily where they are in the scale, which is why we repeat fa, sol, la, because it's based on where it is as far as a relationship to the step, rather than in a more traditional scale that you may be used to, which is the do-a-deer. And that will bring us back to do.
Or fa.
Or fa in our case, yes. Unless we're minor and we start on la.
Yes.
Okay, and if you look at the bass note, open your book, any page, it doesn't matter.
Bases start on la and
The basses will always tell you whether it's major or minor. And they'll tell you that because the bass last note, if it's major, should be a triangle. If it is minor, it will be a rectangle.
So this comes before the words
Except for some of
in
the
whoever started this.
it was done so that people who were semi-literate could learn it without having to go to great agony to play it after. And so it's together, just like in a hymn book. It came together. It postdates the do-re-mi in one sense and came from England to the northern part of the U.S. Billings is one of the major writers. Somebody needs to call Billings.
I'm going to.
Okay. And simply stayed that way because it was something you could learn if you were not particularly well educated. It has spread and then receded and then has spread again. You cannot go to a single state in the Union now and not find the singing, with the exception, I think, of Hawaii. Yeah, because Julie came back and said, no, it's going to sing
Should start something.
But everywhere else is most of the things in the book are religious because it was sung in the churches. And basically in the South, for many, many years, when the distance between doesn't look like a lot when you're going down 85, whatever. But 20 miles was a day's ride on horse on those bad roads. And so the preacher might have, say, 4 churches for which he was responsible. And this Sunday he would be here. The other 3 churches would very likely have singing and dinner on the grounds. And then he'd hit the next church and so forth. That was one of the reasons why the thing remained so popular. You could still have church, you could still have togetherness, even when the preacher couldn't make it that Sunday. When we sang in Alabama, Santa Mountain is on one side of 59, and Lookout Mountain is on the other side of 59. And actually, there's some fractional differences in the way they sing from one side to the other, because it was a long way from here to there. And so each area kind of developed its own traditions, even though they were singing out of the same book. Does that help? Anyway, sorry.
And there's some singers who have written more up to date stuff too that's in this style, and not necessarily Christian religious either. There's a fellow in Lexington, Kentucky, who wrote a shape note song based on a Sephardic tune.
Yeah, and you can. I mean,
But it's important to note that the committee that edits this book will not put anything in this book which is not scripturally based.